Morrow's right. We have to make sure everything else is locked down, or our lives are about to get a lot worse.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Alien Earth Season 1, Episode 5, In Space, No One, ... is the name of the episode. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek. Patrick Klepek, I'm going to put this out there. I recently reviewed Caught Stealing, the new Darren Aronofsky movie, on the Filmcast. We discussed it on one of my other podcasts, and I described that movie as Darren Aronofsky's most entertaining and the least interesting film. And I think that's what I have to say about this episode of the show, too. This is the most entertaining, least interesting Alien Earth episode. Patrick Klepek, am I full of crap? What do you think?
Well, that's a separate question, David. You can't just drop that in the middle of a recap discussion about a television show. That's existential. If you're gonna remake the classic film Alien,
Yeah.
you better do a good job of it. And what I will grant Alien Earth is you did a damn good job of it.
Yes.
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 Arguably Alien Romulus, the film from last year, is itself a remix and remake in some ways of the original film. This one is a little more on the nose about like exactly what it's cribbing from, but I found it to be a really delightful, entertaining, scary, fun, like, hey, like let's just it's called Alien. Let's go back to Alien. And I think it is successful in being a very entertaining episode that doesn't really move the story along all that much. And I have to say, and I wonder, I've seen this, it occurred to me while I was watching it, and I'm wondering what you thought about it as well. It would require some changing the episode a little bit. But what if this had been the pilot to Alien Earth instead of what we got?
I'm not convinced that it wasn't the pilot, Patrick. I'm not convinced that at some point it wasn't the first episode, especially because of how abruptly the first episode is edited, right? Like we open with all the alien iconography, we meet all the people, and then it's like, and then all of a sudden it's the ship is crashing and everything's happening. And I remember when this episode aired, that episode aired, people were like, "Oh, it's so genius to introduce all the people and then not show us what happened to them." Like Noah Hawley playing with editing and storytelling once again. It's like, no, he actually shot all that stuff. They were just waiting until episode 5 to reveal that. Anyway, to kind of directly address your point, Patrick, and feel free to finish if you haven't yet. But like, I think this would have made the show feel totally different if they started with this, right? In probably a bad way, because first of all, these characters that you meet, you don't really care about any of them because they're all dead by the end. But secondly, the rest of the show is really not this tone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't make sense to really make this the first episode because most of the show is not this. And so I think people would be annoyed if you did this as first and then like literally nothing, or not annoyed, but I think they would find it weird and disorienting if this is the first episode and then literally nothing else like in the show is like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see that. But also my reaction to the first 2 episodes of Alien Earth were, wow, you made a bad Alien film and like turned it into 2 episodes of television. And my response to this episode was like, oh, you made a really good like Alien movie and turned it into an episode of television.
I was not familiar with your game.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Noah Hawley.
I was worried as the episode began. I was like, oh man, like, look, there are a lot of beats that the Alien films repeat, but to the Alien franchise's credit, even at its worst, it's repeating beats. They've never really just done a remake of the original film. It's a lot of beats that are played out in different settings, but it's never quite just been, let's go back to people trapped on a ship and a xenomorph is being born. What would happen? That's essentially what Alien Romulus does. But like otherwise, like they've kind of put things in different frameworks and settings in interesting ways. And so it's not as though this is a franchise that is constantly revisiting top to bottom, let's do something adjacent to the original Alien. And I think here it's a smart version of one of those, like even down to like the moment with the chain is, I think this episode even picks its battles like really smartly with homages and like tip of the hats to iconic moments in the original. Like the chain one really got me. It's like, oh, okay. Like where the chain in this like wet little engineering area is actually going to be like the tail of the xenomorph, which is a great moment in the original film. And it doesn't happen here. And it's not played for laughs either. You only sort of know if you remember that moment from the original, make the connection, which that's how you do an homage. That's how you do an Easter egg, is not point at the screen and be like, do you get it? It's, no, I get it because I like that film. So I don't know. I'm with you that it would have been different, but I think it's a pretty exceptional episode of television from an entertainment standpoint. And I don't know. Maybe it points to a show that has gotten a little bit lost in the editing process as they figured out how they wanted to tell that story. But I think the introduction of the xenomorph in episodes 1 and 2 is haphazard, clunky, suggests that Holly doesn't really know what to do with it, or is like wholly uninterested in the xenomorph as a creature, which is fine, but you feature it a lot in those first 2 episodes.
Who doesn't know what to do with the xenomorph?
Holly.
Yeah, I see. Noah
Holly, yes. And like that's what made my reaction to episodes 1 and 2 like very mixed. Like, I don't know what show you're making. Yeah. Why did you set it in this universe? And I think it's achieved something more cohesive. Like, again, I'm all on board where the show is at now. I'm very excited to see how it concludes. But I think this episode would have proved like, hey, I get it. I understand what makes like this like franchise tick. Look, I just pulled off a magic trick. I did a really like fun, entertaining episode of Alien Earth that is really just like revisiting the original Ridley Scott classic. And I think with some, moving the script around a little bit, it would have been a really interesting introduction to Murrow. It would have been an interesting introduction to a lot of the alien creatures. I think a better introduction to them than the show gives them in those first 2 episodes. I just think like top to bottom, making the xenomorph have a weakness or like can be distracted. Like we'll get into, what all that is as we break down the episode. I just think top to bottom, I think it's a better glide path into what this show wants to accomplish and shows a fundamental understanding of the visual aesthetic of Alien, what makes these creatures interesting and scary. And I think it would have worked better as a pilot, but I'll take it at episode 5 because I still had a really good time with it.
Interesting. All right, well, let's talk about what actually happens in the episode. So I think what you're saying is you liked it a lot more than me. I mean, I liked it. I had a blast with this episode. I thought it was really well done. It also made me ask the question, why does every director feel like they need to remake Alien? Like it's a remake of Alien pretty much, in my opinion, right?
I think it's just too tempting. Like it is just one of those movies. And I think it
has some new elements to it, right? Like it's not like there's nothing new in this.
No,
but it's mostly a remake of Alien and has very little bearing on the plot of this show because pretty much everyone on the ship is dead. So it's like
there's one reveal. Like there's one reveal.
And also we learn much more about like Morrow's backstory, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So what happens in this episode? We're on the USS Maginot 17 days before they arrived on Earth. And this whole episode is dedicated to what went wrong with the ship before it crashed. Morrow wakes up and things are already going badly. One of the facehuggers has escaped containment. And as a result, Captain Dinsdale is dead. And another crew member, Bronsky, has a facehugger on him. They try to then put that guy in cryosleep, but it doesn't matter. So actually, there is some alien lore stuff that is impacted by this, because I believe in the original Alien film, there is a big debate about whether they put one of the face-hugged people into cryosleep.
Mm-hmm.
And what we learned in this episode of Alien Earth is it wouldn't have mattered. Those things can survive cryosleep and still incubate the alien, and so on and so forth.
There was one of my favorite parts of this entire sequence is, Alien itself has like the franchise at its best is like this. They're secretly like pretty funny movies. Like they have good beats of like comedy with the characters.
Yeah.
And part of what I appreciated about this episode was like clearly Hawley understands that. And because he wrote and directed this one, which is not true of like every episode of Alien Earth. So, and the part that I really enjoyed was like when Morrow comes in is like asking, one when he's like, "Where are your pants?" That was a good bit.
What happened?
Mr. Morrow, you're in your underwear.
And the other one was like, "Well, what happened to that guy? And his neck is just melted away because they did the reasonable thing, which was like, we'll try to cut off.
We'll try to cut it off.
The creature, and it just melted his fucking neck. I was dying. I'm like, it's being played very seriously,
right?
But there was also the way that actor was. It was a little bit of a oopsie
at the base of the tail, and he just
they bleed acid.
I made an oopsie. Oops.
I made an oopsie.
Oops,
his
I
neck
dropped.
Is gone.
Yeah,
so
that was pretty
good.
funny. That was pretty amusing. But yeah, like there are a few major plot developments worth mentioning. But like, you know, we all kind of know the arc of what happens.
Yep.
The aliens get loose. They start killing people left and right, and Morrow crashes the ship onto Earth. Nothing of note to the main plot really happens in this episode, but there are a few major twists, and then we can talk about some of our favorite sequences.
Mm-hmm.
So the big thing is that in a massive plot twist, we learned that Boy Cavalier actually caused the crash. He bribed Chief Engineer Petrovich to set a fire that just happened to destroy the ship's navigational system and engine relays. That's one of my favorite lines of dialogue is when Morrow says, "Really? A fire just happened to destroy the one panel that controlled those two critical functions? I don't buy it. I don't think it was an accident." And by the way, Morrow, is pretty much is like the main character of the show, in my opinion. Like he is not billed as the lead, but he should be the lead because he's by far the most interesting character. I like that this episode, you know, in the lead up to this episode, he is kind of set up as this psychopathic killer who will stop at nothing. But then you learn actually there's some really good reasons why he's really pissed, right? There's some really good reasons why he's acting the way he's acting. He's lost everything that he's ever loved because his daughter has died in a house fire. He's basically only working for Weyland-Yutani, who, by the way, we learned took him in as a child. And so it's like, okay, well, now a lot more of his actions make sense. He is not an unfeeling thing. He's just a very effective security officer. And the only competent guy on the ship, basically. Right?
Well, it's his identity, right? Like having lost everything else, ensuring the success of the mission because of a personal connection he has to Yutani. Like, I think he might, you know, he could probably recognize like what these corporations engage in is bad, but like that he has nothing else. Like his labor, his associate with Yutani has become his identity, and combined with his ultimate competence creates the Morrow that we see in the show.
Yeah. Now, you might also ask the question, hey, is it so smart for Boy Cavalier to cause a massive wreck in his own city? And Noah Hawley has addressed this in an interview with the Hollywood Reporter, which also speaks to some of the topics we were discussing last week, Patrick Klepek, on this podcast. Commenting on this quote-unquote twist, Noah Hawley said, quote, "I don't look at our tech billionaires and think these guys are orchestrating some master plan. I think you have a lot of ADHD billionaires with impulse control issues. And we always look to impose a certain logic on our fiction that doesn't apply to real life. For me, it's a way to tie everything together as the show plays out in the rest of the season. We find that the boy genius is not a terribly thoughtful and calculating guy. He has all these ideas. He chases all of them at the same time, and he has never failed. So he thinks failure is impossible. He's trying to launch this immortality product. So why would he do this other stuff? He thinks, oh, I could do everything." End quote. I do think it's an astute critique of the tech billionaires we find ourselves with in our universe, in our timeline. And so, I mean, there's limits to it, right? Because there's only a certain amount where you can say, oh, that's why the character is doing something incredibly stupid. It's because they're a billionaire and they're reckless. And it's like, okay, yes. At a certain point, it's strange credulity. I don't think he's reached that point quite yet, but he's like pretty close to it, in my opinion. Who knows? Your mileage may vary. But I thought that was an interesting commentary on how Boy Cavalier shows up as a character.
Well, and I think this episode, one thing that is overlooked in the iconic design of the xenomorph, and so many things that are so iconic in that original film, is how much that movie's relationship with labor and class and exploitation And that is often lost in a lot of the sequels and spinoffs that become much more focused and concentrated on the xenomorph and the spectacle of the aliens and stuff like that. And that's all fun, but something that was like, I was like, well, if you were to do an alien television show, something you could really dig into is that, which is not like throwaway lines in the original Alien. Like it's like, it's critical to what makes those characters like relatable and interesting is, you know, I mean, this question comes up a lot in Alien. Is like, it's a world of androids and like different types of bodies. Like, why send a human on like, why not just load up the ship full of, androids that would just do exactly what you tell them? Well, the implication of the world of Alien is that they're still profoundly expensive on a per sort of like android basis. And two, why not just use the desperate slabs of meat that will do it for you? Like you could just throw enough of them at the wall and they'll do it happily because they don't have any other option. I mean, that's the entire, like the conversation that the show, I've never seen it in an Alien film before, as far as I can tell, where they actually talk through like the time lapse of like being gone and coming back, like the conversation you had between like the engineer and the apprentice over like the share that you can get being gone for 65 years. They have like really meaningful conversations in this episode about like the relationship of labor to the exploitation by these corporations that are featured in the franchise. And I think the show is at its best when it's like playing to that. I mean, yes, you have the billionaire stuff, but also what does it mean for the average person? It's Moreau becoming like deeply sympathetic to an exploitative corporation because it becomes his identity. It's these people giving up everything they know and love to get a share that will then transform their lives when they come back to be shared with nobody that they knew when they left. And all of that is profoundly sad and like interesting to the world of Alien.
I want to say, Patrick, there's a scene in Aliens where Ellen Ripley learns that her daughter has passed away that I think was removed from the theatrical release.
It's in the director's cut, right?
Yeah, it's now in the director's cut, but it's kind of along those lines. Also, it just made me realize that, like, yes, that is something that this show also cribs from, obviously, because that is exactly what happens to Morrow. He realizes that his daughter has passed away during transit while he's been in cryosleep and what have you. So the other thing we learn is that the alien creatures kind of got out on their own. Like, I think when we watched the pilot, there was this potential implication that maybe Morrow had set the creatures free or had done something to sabotage the ship. But in fact, that's not the case at all, right? He was trying to preserve what was going on with it. Like, it was not his desire that the aliens escape and then they crash land the ship.
The ship wasn't a big experiment, which is like one of my running fears. Like, like it's actually like they gather these things, contain it in a ship, and then see what happens, and that becomes a point of data.
We do need to talk about the creatures, Patrick Klepek, and again, I think we commented on this in the past, but I do find it interesting that somehow all the aliens are able to make humans die in the most painful ways imaginable. But
they started there from a design conversation and then worked backwards.
They backed out. It's like, how can we make this one kill a human in the most painful way possible? I mean, first of all, Patrick, I've already commented on the poor containment procedures in the Prodigy Corporation. I feel like the same is true of Weyland-Yutani. You got people doing fucking science experiments while eating sandwiches like that. It's just like, okay, I understand these are working class, blue collar people, but also they're fucking alien life forms. Like, don't eat a sandwich while you're experimenting with these things. I do think that the design of these creatures is super, super cool.
Yeah.
Like, there's that one little bug that like opens the container that it's in, and then it goes to the jar of water. And I'm like, I will tell you, I did not predict that thing was going to vomit up a bunch of little tadpole parasites things like that. When that happened, I was like, oh my God, that's way more upsetting than what I thought was going to happen. Which is like, he goes in the water and someone drinks it, and like, he like vomits up all these little tadpole things. Very, very upsetting. Right, and then like the tension around like the water and stuff is very, very cool.
Oh, it's really good. Waiting for that bomb to go off was delightful. I mean, I sort of just made peace at a certain point that I think Alien Earth is doing in regards to like, why is no one wearing a mask? Like, for example, right?
Right. And when they're like, when he pulls out the ticks on his thing and then it releases this powder that kills them, it's like, okay, like
feels like that could have been prevented if you were wearing
why aren't you wearing a mask? Like,
well, they wear a mask when they're investigating the facehugger in the original Alien, so it's not as though there isn't precedent. I think the show is, it's a little bit, on one hand, it's sort of like in The Last of Us, right? Like The Last of Us in the game, like, in The Last of Us, like there are spores like in the air that can infect you. They make a change in the first season of The Last of Us in which that is not true because they did not want to film a television show in which main characters had masks on for like huge chunks of the show. Right. And it's like, that makes sense. And I think to a certain degree, that's a little bit what's happening here is like, just sort of go along with it because we want our actors to be expressive and they otherwise might be in masks 30% of the time. So just go with it.
Same thing with Alien Covenant, by the way, where they go on this foreign planet, no one's wearing masks, and they inhale the alien spores. Right. It's
right. But then you're walking a fine line, right? Like, I can buy that because, like, hey, like we want our actors to express, but I do think you go too far when you have two characters die because they inhale gas. Like, just don't kill them. Then you have to find a different way for them to die.
Right. Because otherwise people ask the question, why aren't they wearing masks?
Exactly. It's like, I can look past that if the actions of the characters aren't resulting in consequences that would have been prevented by basic safety precautions that would probably happen on a science vessel.
It is a terrifying idea, though, these like ticks burrowed into your internal organs that if you like adjust them a little bit, they release a toxic powder.
It's terrible.
That's a cool idea, right? It's a cool... terrible idea.
It's yes. I think the one of the things I've been most encouraged by in the show in its attempt to try and diversify the monster lineup, like, and I think they've done a really good job of that. Like, I think Creepy Eyeball is MVP. I had a pet theory halfway through this episode, and like, is it possible that the xenomorph we've seen the entire time has been controlled by Eyeball Guy? Like, is it possible that can Eyeball Guy burrow in somehow to xenomorph, even though the blood is acid? Like, is that possible? Which I think speaks to just how much fun like the creature designs are. In Alien
they're pretty awesome.
When it's tapping to try and warn the lady that like the other creatures are trying to infect her, like tapping its little container. Just more eyeball creature, please.
Yeah, eyeball creature is pretty awesome in the show for sure. Okay, couple of other things to mention that happened this episode. There was this whole subplot that felt like it was cut out, and I don't even know why they left part of it in, because I don't think we're ever going to revisit these characters again. So, no. But I don't know if you noticed, there was this sketchy Asian dude, Tang.
Yeah.
Who did some weird things to this woman while she was in cryosleep, and it's never explained. The implication is that he's like pleasuring himself while watching her sleep, but like you never, nothing. No, that's it. It's just, it's like, what? Why even leave that part in if you're not even gonna, I don't even know what they were doing.
I think that character exists solely to be a red herring for the audience. It's a distraction. Sure. Like,
it's the evil Asian guy again. Oh no, twist! It's not. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Noah Hawley. Appreciate that.
It's too bad because the way the actor plays him is really unsettling. Like, it's a good performance that is underserved by the writing. And I would have loved to have spent a little more time with my creepy guy, but that is not to be. He is definitively got like at a certain point in this episode. But I was really enjoying him, but I'm with you that ends up being a really underserved character because it's very one note and doesn't go anywhere and only exists for him to reveal some critical information that like, he may seem like the bad guy, but he knows that there's a bad guy. And
he's saying the guy might be in the cryopod, but he's not sleeping. To which the response might be, you could have brought this to my attention yesterday instead of waiting for me to interrogate you. I do think the way the episode unfolds of Morrow kind of watching the security footage and watching the logs and doing all this thing, it's like a very well-paced episode of like all this information slowly coming. You're introduced to everyone. slowly people start dying. Slowly the information starts coming out. Like it's really well done in that regard. And there's many similar dynamics here. There's some like interesting takes on the lore here, right? So we learn that Zaveri and Bronsky are having a relationship with each other, and how this is expressly forbidden according to the Weyland-Yutani regulations, and more about how, oh, like if you don't do this, what the security officer says, you do not get your share, and how money and capitalism is used to compel people to do things against their interests. We see also Zaveri going to speak with Mother, and Mother's like, whatever happens, make sure the xenomorphs are okay. Like, I don't give a fuck about you, but like, make sure the xenomorph. It's very in keeping with what we know from Weyland-Yutani and other depictions of it, and so I do want to just affirm those other things. The only other thing I wanted to mention is they used electric, non-lethal rounds, which I thought was kind of interesting, and I don't believe that was in the original Alien. That they could use these
in terms of dealing with the creatures, right? And that's actually how they subdue the xenomorph in the first 2 episodes of the show, right? Like when they kind of bag it up, and
well, he used this kind of like foam or whatever, right? At some point, but anyway, yeah. So, any other thoughts or sequences that you want to mention that are worth mentioning, Patrick Klepek?
I did think it was interesting. We'll see if the show gets into it, but there was when they realized that the alien, like the facehugger, has given birth to a tiny, and they call it the xenomorph, right? Like in the episode, like they use that term. They also ask, like, how big do those things get again? Because one thing that hasn't been addressed, and maybe the show will never get into it, is like, how do they get all this stuff? Where? You know what I mean? Like, planet fucked up stuff. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that planet bad vibes. Gotta land here and take what we can get. Like, but it's implied that they encountered or have some sense of a xenomorph and like what it is,
right?
How tall they can get.
Right.
They have like this isn't their first encounter with at least the xenomorph. Maybe the facehugger, that's an open question. They didn't see part of the gestation process, but it is implied they know something about the xenomorph with that, which I thought was interesting.
This leads me to one final point I wanted to make. In response to last week's episode, I had this whole rant about how, hey, maybe the fact that there were aliens and xenomorphs on Earth before makes Alien 1 Ridley Scott movie less special somehow. And several people chimed in, including to decodingtv@gmail.com and on various social platforms, saying, David Chen, as usual, you're wrong about something. Because, okay, now I want to clarify what I was referring to, okay? In the Ridley Scott original Alien film, the way it's depicted is this mining vessel named the Nostromo is out there in the middle of nowhere. They get a distress call, and they respond to it and find, oh, whoa, like, guys, freaking xenomorph shit is going. What a wild, incredible that we found this amazing creature out in the middle of nowhere by happenstance, right? That is what the plot of Alien externally is. Now, what we then learn throughout the course of the movie is, hey, Ash is actually a synth sent by the Weyland-Yutani Corporation to ensure that the xenomorph gets back to Earth. Now, my interpretation of that was always that Weyland-Yutani realized what they had during the mission of like, oh, this might be an earth-shattering discovery, and then told Ash, hey, Ash, you better get this thing home.
Mm-hmm.
The events of Alien Earth and also the Alien novelization, the official Alien novelization.
Oh, stop it! No,
well,
no.
I'm just saying.
We're not doing. No, we're
But I'm just saying, it is now canonical, Patrick Klepek. It is canonical that Weyland-Yutani knew what the xenomorph was looking for it, sent Ash specifically on the Nostromo to get it, and that is all canonical, right? So the idea of there being aliens on Earth during Alien Earth doesn't really conflict with the idea that Whaley Yutani already knew about it. And also the official novelization kind of affirms that fact. Now, a lot of people chimed in, basically said, guys, David Chen, Whaley Yutani already knew about the alien. It's very clear from the way Ash behaves, like in the Ridley Scott Alien, Whaley Yutani, like Ash already, like it's already all a thing. And I'll just say that wasn't my initial experience of Alien, okay? and now there's a lot of lore that's been built up, and okay, I guess it makes sense that Whaley Yutani already knew about it. But if you're just watching the movie and you don't know the novel and you haven't seen Alien Earth, you would think, oh wow, what a random thing that happened, that they found the alien. And there's something kind of cool and special and unique about that in my opinion this show may make less special. So that's the best argument I can make for it. You may be unconvinced, that's fine, but I just wanted to at least, people can hate my opinion, I just want them to at least understand what I was trying to say. So as usual, that is what I was trying to say. Okay, those are thoughts on Alien Earth episode 5. Really fun episode, really well done, hugely enjoyable. I don't know if we're ever going to refer to any of the events from this episode ever again. So who knows what the rest of the show is going to be, but I doubt we're going to see these characters again. And so I question how necessary it was to remake Alien to tell the story of Alien Earth. But if you're going to do it, at least do a good job. And they did a good job. So Patrick Klepek and I both agree. Solid episode of Alien Earth. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.